Hello, Tim Graham here with NewsBusters. We're having an interview today here with Derek Hunter, author of the new book, Outrage Incorporated. He talks about the liberal mob ruining science, journalism, and Hollywood. This is right up our alley. Welcome, Derek.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew this one would be right in your wheelhouse.
That it is. I'm sure the first question everybody asks you is, Outrage Incorporated, who makes an outrage today?
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
It's the entire liberal plan of attack for the election, for their existence. The one thing I discovered in writing this, and part of why I wrote this, is I bet, Tim, you've made some apologies in your life. And most of the time, those apologies were for things that you did in an emotional state or said in an emotional state. Not when you're thinking rationally. You didn't kick the cat when you were feeling good about life. You stubbed your toe and you threw the remote control or something. Emotion overrides logic, and that is what the left is these days. You see it every time. I mean, the day after President Trump was inaugurated, they had a march in the street, the Women's March. 2 weeks later, it was the March for Science. And ever since then, they've had these great mutant marches, as I unaffectionately call them, to keep people riled up, because emotion, anger, fear are the kryptonite to rational thought. And the left is offering nothing other than emotion to counter Republicans right now. You got full employment, you got almost 4% growth, which they said 2 years ago was impossible. What are they going to run on? We're going to get you a job. Well, I've got a job. We're going to grow the economy. The economy's growing way better than it ever was when you had control. The only real viable option for them is to scare the hell out of people into thinking that the next Hitler is living in the White House. History's greatest monster is just around the corner. Republicans are going to kill people by taking away their health care, which led to James Hodgkinson trying to kill a bunch of Republicans last year. That sort of vitriol, it's a very dangerous balancing act that we're seeing now. And I think Democrats are playing a weird game of chicken as to whether or not the mob will erupt into violence before November. They want to keep the mob just at that boiling point, but they know that if it goes too far, it's going to be to their detriment. So they're in a precarious place right now, and a dangerous place for the country.
Well, this is what intrigues me, is there's that whole idea of the media are the arbiters of facts. Mm-hmm. That they are the ones that, as much as they talk about civility now, are very big at enforcing civility against conservatives and seem to be encouraging incivility among the Democrats. Whether it's kicking Sarah Sanders out of a restaurant, whether it's basically cheering on these prank covers of Time magazine, whether they're basically trying to sort of talk around what Maxine Waters had to say. I think the problem I have, if you watch the media, is where's the media that's supposed to moderate a debate, not just allow both sides to speak, but actually keep things a little moderate?
It's dead. They are now activists with press credentials, as I document in the book. You have a situation, look, I've seen these interviews, you've seen these interviews, I've had these conversations with people. Tucker Carlson once told me that I would never ever hire anybody who wanted to go into journalism because they wanted to change the world or make a difference. Yet when you watch these journalists talk about why they went into journalism, it is inevitably, I wanted to make a difference in the world. I wanted to make the world a better place. A journalist's job is supposed to be, here's what happened, here's how it happened, here's what it means, and here are all the facts surrounding it, who, what, where, when, and why of an event that is deemed newsworthy. Now we get profile packages designed to tug at your emotional heartstrings. They find the worst case scenario. They do this all the time. I used to work health policy at the Heritage Foundation. And whenever liberals wanted to expand health care, they always had this playbook. They would find some middle America grandmother who was having difficulty paying for her prescriptions and was forced to eat canned tuna, or they would call it cat food. And they would present her as the norm to try and scare people again from thinking and saying, you could be this. This isn't you now, but it could be you because of those evil Republicans standing in your way. It is all an appeal to emotion now, and it works. The ratings are fine. I mean, they're down over history, but they're doing better than most. So I see no end to it. It's kind of frightening. It's sad because I used to watch, when I was in college, I graduated college in 2000. When I was in college, I would come home and I would watch Hardball at 5 o'clock, Brit Hume at 6 o'clock. Sometimes I would rewatch Hardball at 7 o'clock. I would then watch the Fox primetime lineup, and then sometimes even rewatch Hardball at 11 o'clock because there was actual debate going on. There was actual discussion with newsmakers. That is dead. An MSNBC panel consists of varying degrees of people who agree, and they just take it up another notch. You not only don't learn anything, you can actually come away dumber from watching some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, when we looked at last week with the separation of parents and children at the border, this is, again, one of those things where I think the American people look at this and say, this is what when we say something is trumped up or fake, like the fake Time cover. But it's the whole idea, we understand that some of this was going on under Obama. And we understand we're not going to have this rational debate where we say, well, what should we do when an illegal immigrant comes with kids? They're not asking that question.
Nobody's talking about the law. Nobody's talking about our sovereignty. Nobody's talking about these people. Look, there are easy ways to get into this country. They involve bridges. If you have to swim the Rio Grande rather than walk over a bridge over the Rio Grande, you know you're doing something illegal. I can have empathy for the people and their plight without having any sympathy for them in their current predicament. They knowingly and willingly broke the law, and that has been obliterated, and they're treated the exact same way as somebody waiting in Caracas for the embassy to say, yes, we will now grant you a green card or a guest worker program, or we'll let you come in the front door while people are sneaking in the back door. They're being equated, and it's frustrating because it's a bastardization of the truth, and it's more degrading of what journalism is supposed to be. It's agenda-driven. They are of a hive mind. They don't need to be told. There was The Journalist, which was exposed a few years ago by the Daily Caller, where they were talking about this is how you should message and how you should report on things. They don't even need that anymore. They just see somebody do it, and they know immediately to jump on it. In 2000, during the election, remember Dick Cheney was... The second he was announced as the vice president, the word gravitas came out of everybody's mouth in the media. Oh, he's adding gravitas, much needed gravitas, blah, blah, blah. It's that every single day. That was an anomaly back then.
Yeah.
Now it is every single day, every single hour. It's sad because the American people need information. I love journalism. I love real journalism because I want to be informed, and I want as many people to be informed as possible. But it's getting more and more difficult to find it.
Yeah, I mean, people will say to me, what do you watch? And it's like, well, you have to watch a mixture of things. But really what citizens need to do now is try to find the raw video.
Yeah. You really do have to go out there and hunt for it. You should read conservative sites. You should read liberal sites and find the truth in there. If something is repeated on both sides, that's generally what happened. But in respect to your Time magazine announcement, that cover is ridiculous, and 10 years ago somebody would have been fired over it. But we're now approaching the point that newspapers will no longer have a correction section. It'll be a justification section, because Time magazine didn't say, wow, we dropped the ball, we were fooled by this. They justified the use of a fraudulent picture that was already photoshopped to have the president staring at that kid, but they justified it. Mm-hmm. That is not, the Luce family would be rolling over in their grave at what has become of what they started.
Yeah, I mean, do you get into the book in fact checking or the fact checking sites?
The fact checking, it's the latest greatest craze. PolitiFact, one of my favorite stories in the book is how PolitiFact, for 3 different fact checks, declared if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You like your plan, you can keep your plan, as varying degrees of true. They even fact-checked it before there was legislation. During the 2008 campaign, they fact-checked it and declared it mostly true. Then, once Barack Obama was elected twice, 2013, suddenly PolitiFact says, this is the lie of the year. It's a lie of the year in which a year in which it wasn't said. It had been said dozens of times prior to that, but now that Barack Obama was no longer possibly held accountable to voters, it was suddenly the lie of the year. That was a sort of a CYA moment for PolitiFact, because 5 million people had lost their health insurance that they liked and wanted to keep. They couldn't keep this charade up. But 3 times before that, they said, no, this is true. And even in their true declarations, they said, some people may lose their plans. Well, there was no qualification in Barack Obama's absolute statement of period. You will keep it, period. But they added that in order to provide cover for him because they're on the team. They're on the side of the team. Fact checking is much about how they fact check and what they fact check. During the third debate, I believe it was, NBC News ran a live fact check, and I detail this in the book as well. They did 6 live fact checks. I'm showing 5 fingers. 6 live fact checks. All of them were against Barack Obama. So implicitly, that means Hillary Clinton was nothing but truthful, as pure as the wind-driven snow. And we know that's not true during the debate. But one of the fact checks that they declared a lie is that Donald Trump said that Hillary Clinton acid-washed her server. Now, he's talking about bleach bit. It's a common term.
Right.
Sean Hannity does it all the time, for example. But they declared that to be a lie because she used the program BleachBit, as if Donald Trump was saying literally she gave it an acid bath in a vat of hydrochloric acid. That's how petty they are and how desperate they are to find ways to call Republicans liars and insulate Democrats from their factual inaccuracies.
Yeah, we had one yesterday where Ted Cruz was technically correct,
yes,
and mostly false.
Right. It's lovely when you control the language, when you control the unit of measure. If you're the fact checker, you decide what is and what isn't. If you're controlling the unit of measure, you can always make yourself the fastest, the tallest, the smartest, the funniest, the best looking, whatever it is. When you decide the terms of the measuring, you can always win, and that's what the left has done.
So we talk about facts. When you talk about science in here, I always like to pick at the left a little bit on science, where they'll say, someone can decide they're not the gender they were assigned at birth, and yet we are the people of science. They're constantly telling us that the planet's going to warm to a dangerous degree. I'm old enough that I remember what they scared us about when we were kids was that the planet was going to be so overpopulated we were all going to starve to death.
Right.
What are they doing to science?
They have completely politicized it. They finance, government finances a lot of it, and it's a problem because then you find people in the sciences studying areas that will guarantee them government funding. If you, for example, for whatever weird reason, you go, I want to know what the mating habits of squirrels are. And you apply for a government grant. You're likely not going to get a big check from the government. They say, we got that covered. But if you say, we're going to study the mating habits of squirrels and how it's impacted by climate change, suddenly the purse strings open. So that skews, you know that if you come back and say, there's no impact at all, and I can't even find any evidence of it, your next grant application is likely to be rejected. Well, your job is dependent on publishing, and your publishing is dependent on getting grants to do studies. So it becomes this self-fulfilling cycle. The idea, I remember when I was a kid, science was show me the proof. You had to actually prove something. Somewhere along the line, it became majority vote. So show of hands, 50.1%, and there it is, settled science, move along. But if you remember, 90s, early 2000s, Al Gore going, we only have 10 years before everything, it's too late to do anything. Well, that window closed.
Yeah.
I was in New York last week for the book. I didn't have to take a gondola to my hotel.
Yeah.
It is not flooded. I haven't been there, but I assume that Miami is still there because I'm sure I would have heard if it were otherwise. What they predicted doom and gloom-wise didn't come to pass. So they did something brilliant and diabolical. Instead of making 10-year predictions, where if you were the head of a doomsday cult and you say, Sunday, end of the world, I promise you, and all your followers sell all their earthly belongings, come Monday morning, you're going to have some explaining to do. Instead of examining why these predictions they made didn't come to pass in the time frame they originally set out, they changed them to 100-year predictions so that the people alive today won't be alive when they don't come true. They can't be proven, but more importantly, they can't be disproven. Now you have studies, as I cite in the book, about in the year 2100, the number of lightning strikes on the planet are going to double. First of all, who cares? Secondly, how do you know that? If you take the models that they're basing their 100-year predictions on, theoretically, if you're to believe that, you should be able to go back 100 years or 50 years, plug in the relevant data, and it should plot exactly what happened. If we're going to base the future on it, they should actually be able to prove that it worked in the past. When they do that, it doesn't work. It doesn't show us what happened. So that's just ignored. It's slid to the side. It's this giant I don't want to call it conspiracy because most of it isn't done for the political agenda from the scientist standpoint, although a lot of it is. It's done to get money. It's done to get funding. It's done to get attention. And then you've got media-created mouthpieces like Bill Nye the Science Guy, who's a failed stand-up comedian who then was cast as the science guy for a local PBS show and is now, when there's a hurricane down in the Gulf, he's on television saying this is because of climate change. He knows if you want to build a bridge, you call Bill Nye the Science Guy because he's got an engineering background, not a science background. If you want to know about climate, maybe talk to a climatologist. That's just a crazy thought I have. And the same goes for Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is another favorite, who's all over the television every time there's a rainstorm. He is an astrophysicist. He's much smarter than I am. I'm willing to admit that. But he knows nothing about atmosphere. In fact, what his expertise is in is the exact opposite of an atmosphere. No atmosphere, deep space. Yet he is afforded the credibility of being on television, of being fawned over by reporters and journalists, and spewing left-wing talking points unquestioned because they're all nodding in their head. They're like a row of bobblehead dolls on the family truckster station wagon going down a dirt road. And whenever they talk, it's like, yes, yes, yes. I document all this in the book. Nothing against either one of these guys, but they are not the experts that they are portrayed as. They are portrayed as experts because they happen to toe the liberal line.
Well, and we used to have, way back in the day, and it's been at least a little while now, journalists, even on television, you had a science reporter. You had a Robert Bazell, Jules Bergman, I think, was one. Because they were space guys first, a lot of these guys. They were science reporters. And now none of these people know, a lot of these anchors, did they actually get a college degree? They'll make
journalism. Journalism and gender studies.
And this is the whole problem, is that journalism is a craft. I don't know how you have a major in that. I didn't major in that. I minored in that. I majored in politics, which also wouldn't make you an expert scientist.
Well, journalism is something you kind of have to do to learn.
Yeah.
And it used to be the mentor-mentee sort of system that helped people along the way, and I really trace it back in the book to Watergate, when journalists became celebrities. And everybody, Woodward and Bernstein were portrayed by Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. Robert Redford and Woodward, maybe a close approximation, but Bernstein made out having Dustin Hoffman portray him. Just saying, look it up, Google the pictures. But they became celebrities. They made millions and millions of dollars. They're still dining out on that from today. And the next generation of journalists went in because of them. They wanted to become famous. They wanted to take down a president. Now they're in the editorial positions that would be normally the mentor positions to young journalists coming in saying, hey, keep your opinions to yourself. Maybe don't tweet that Donald Trump is a Nazi because somebody might view that as clouding the way you cover him. They don't anymore. And soon the people who are tweeting that Donald Trump is a Nazi will be in those positions, and it'll get even worse. I don't know how to save journalism, but I know that the people who are practicing it now are aiding in the killing of it.
Well, and then we talk about Hollywood and the way that the press loves Hollywood.
Ugh.
The press loves
almost as much as Hollywood loves itself.
Yeah, well, that's a contest. Yeah. But I mean, the thing that I liked in the book is the way that the media and the left were upset that Taylor Swift didn't take a position.
She committed the second unforgivable sin from the left. The unforgivable sin, of course, is being not of the left, being conservative or even moderate. But Taylor Swift remained silent. Taylor Swift Taylor Swift may not have an opinion on the election of 2016. She voted, she tweeted out a picture of herself at the polling place, but she may not have felt strongly one way or another. She has been famous since she was like 14, so you're not exactly studying the issues, you're too busy counting money. I don't blame you. I wish I was burdened by that problem. But to sit there and there were story after story after story, and not just fringe blogs, but in major publications about why won't Taylor Swift tell us who she's voting for. And the subtext and sometimes the text of those stories was, why won't she come out in favor of Hillary? Yeah. Where is she? Why? Katy Perry is out there campaigning with Hillary. Why isn't Taylor Swift out there? And then it morphed into, maybe she's a secret Trump supporter. Maybe her fans are of the alt-right. It became this massive smear job, all from one person not saying anything. I've never seen anybody, not a question. It's not as though she's in politics. She's a singer. And her not saying something was a scandal to a lot of people. Her fans were angry. The people who normally give her glowing coverage were angry. Where are you? Why aren't you involved in this? Tell us, please. If you're out there and you think, I can't make a move politically until I find out what Taylor Swift said, don't vote. Please, do the world a favor, don't vote. I don't know what Taylor Swift's politics are, but I know that yours are bad. I know that yours are dumb. Don't vote. But this is the world where we are nowadays, where we have to know what everybody thinks, because you can't sit there and enjoy the music. Yeah, I'm sitting there and tapping to shake it off. And like, wait a second, what are her politics? Should I really be enjoying this? You're leading a miserable life and you're wasting your life if that thought ever occurs to you. Especially as conservatives, we don't have a whole lot.
We would be stuck.
We'd just be sitting here humming, watching drawings. Okay, this is entertainment. We have to put it aside, but the left can't, because, again, the thesis, the emotion, overrides everything else.
So do you think maybe these people ever think that we've elevated celebrities who are not qualified to pronounce on politics, most of them, that somehow led us into a place where they would say we've elected a reality TV show star president? Same way they actually ripped into Ronald Reagan as a movie actor after the fact that he'd been governor of California for 2 terms.
Well, they've been long elevating celebrities to status they don't deserve. It's sad, but what I've seen and what I've noticed and wrote about, we've blurred the line. There used to be a line, famous, infamous. That line's gone now. Now it's just about getting attention. So now we have things like, he's a social media celebrity.
Yeah.
You're not a social media celebrity. You're a guy who gets a lot of attention for doing stupid things, and people will watch you do stupid things. But we've obliterated the difference between the two. So it's only natural that a media that had elevated people who've done things, movie stars or whatever, would elevate them as well, and it entered into the political realm. And now there's the policing of it. If you are not of the left, you are an enemy. You will be destroyed. You will be outed. You will be hounded like Taylor Swift. What do you really think? Tell us what you really think about the trade issue, Taylor Swift. She doesn't know. Leave her alone. But we've long been a little bit too celebrity-centric. It's a problem. Leonardo DiCaprio is a brilliant actor. I wouldn't take anything away from his abilities, but he, as an environmental hero, he fills his party yacht with Victoria's Secret models and takes a private jet to it. Nothing against it. The world would be a better place with more Victoria's Secret models on party yachts. But it's not exactly green when he's sitting here lecturing you that you need to ride your bike to work and you need to lower your carbon footprint as he goes to his 20,000-foot estate in the Caribbean, is a little bit hypocritical. Al Gore is now worth $200 million for helping the poor and trying to save the planet. If I'd have known there was that much money and that stuff, I would have gone into that racket a long time ago. But this is where it's not what they do. They're free to do whatever they want. What bothers me is the blatant hypocrisy, the double standards. And as Chris Plant says, if it weren't for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. It is absolutely true, and it's pretty much on every single issue.
So let's wrap up with the notion of, you've convinced the reader, and maybe when somebody comes to a book like this, they know that what you have to say is right. Everybody understands the way the left dominates academia. It dominates Hollywood. It dominates the news. And the trouble with books like yours or mine is, well, we're angrier after we read it than when we started. Well, I mean, how do we cope?
Well, at the end, I make a point of saying, have some fun. For God's sakes, life is far too short to not have any fun. What I really want people to take away from this and get hope is they will learn this, not only the major ways that the left is trying to manipulate them through these, and the parenthetical at the end really should have been, and pretty much everything else, but that would have been too long of a title. It is to recognize the subtle ways in which this is done. The bias by proxy. John Oliver and Samantha Bee have 2 wildly unpopular television shows. House Hunters International more than doubles the audience of Samantha Bee's show on Wednesday nights. I'm a viewer of House Hunters International.
Me too.
But the next day, every major news organization writes up what she wrote. And John Oliver, the same way. Sunday nights on HBO, come Monday, Time Magazine. John Oliver eviscerates, obliterates, destroys this, that, or the other thing. That is allowing the bias by proxy. If Chrissy Teigen tweets an anti-Trump tweet, that gets written up by Newsweek. Why? Because the writer, the journalist, wishes they could say that, but the last veneer of journalistic credibility won't allow them to do it, so they seize on any opportunity. Chrissy Teigen will do nothing in her life to be newsworthy, quite frankly. Let's be honest. Unless she somehow lands a plane where everybody is suffering from food poisoning, like the movie Airplane, she will do nothing. She's a model. Nothing against her. The world needs models. But her thoughts, 140 or 280 characters at a time, aren't newsworthy. Yet they're covered as they are because it gives those news organizations an opportunity to print what they wish they could print under their own names, under their own quotations. It's those sort of subtle ways that I point out in the book that I think people will take away so that you can spot it. You have to consume news. You have to consume news from news organizations. News organizations are mostly liberal. This will be the filter through which you can consume that news and not be consumed by that news.
Yeah, we always say, if you can't handle the news, come to NewsBusters and see what you missed.
Right.
But yeah, you obviously...
And there's a lot of NewsBusters footnotes in here. There's like 300 footnotes. A lot of them are from the MRC. I appreciate what you guys do.
Well, I appreciate you coming by, Derek. We thank you for coming by. The book is Outrage Incorporated. It's on sale now. Go grab one.
Please do.
Thank you.